I drove the car that I did not cause the death. Ladies and gentlemen, I tend to agree with Ms. Gonzalez. This is a case about accountability, and the defendant has not taken any accountability in this case. I gave him every opportunity to do so when he was up on that stand, and all you heard were excuses for his behavior that night and lies. And as he sits before you here today, crying, that's a self-realization that he has to accept the verdict that you rendered in this case. He wasn't crying before. He wasn't crying up on that stand when I was asking him about what happened. You didn't see any remorse from him then. But now that he has to accept your verdict and the consequences that you're going to render in this case, now he wants to cry. He wasn't crying when we saw video of Mr. Moody being struck and killed. But now that he has to accept.
San Antonio, Texas, a courtroom inside the 197th Judicial District Court. Judge Stephanie Boyd is on the bench. The date is sometime in 2023. A jury has already decided guilt. Now it is deciding what happens next to a man named Robert Castillo. Castillo was convicted on 2 counts. The first was manslaughter. The second was failing to stop, give information, and render aid after an accident involving death.
He was working for a company called Judicial, and the company developed software for public school systems to incorporate in their student-based technology. Actually, the software would monitor student safety, so he developed software for those programs.
The victim's name was Eric Michael Moody. He was 36 years old. He was struck and killed while on foot near the Blue Star area of San Antonio, not far from the condominium where he lived on South Floor Street. He was a software engineer. He developed safety monitoring tools for public school students. He had a dog. He had a girlfriend who played violin. He had a plaque at his favorite coffee bar that read, "Loving son, loyal friend, valued colleague, chill dude."
Yeah, so this is a plaque that a very talented woodworker in my family made for Eric in his honor. And what's inscribed is loving son, loyal friend, valued colleague, chill dude. And so, Eric, you are missed every day. Halcyon asked if they could put the plaque in their cafe, and they put it on the window next to the table that Eric often sat at to work. So it's a beautiful tribute to him, and I go and visit and look at it when I come here.
Robert Castillo did not stop after the collision. He did not call for help. He drove away. 2 days later, after news articles connected a vehicle to the scene, he turned himself in. The punishment phase of a criminal trial in Texas is the proceeding that happens after a jury finds a defendant guilty. It is a separate proceeding where the same jury decides the sentence. In Texas, for a second-degree felony like manslaughter, that range runs from 2 years to 20 years in state prison. The jury can also recommend community supervision, which is probation, but only if the defendant has never previously been convicted of a felony and only if the sentence assessed is 10 years or less. Castillo had never been convicted of a felony. His attorney, David McClan, was asking the jury to give him probation. Christine Gonzalez, Eric Moody's mother, took the stand during the punishment phase. She had not lived in San Antonio for years, but she kept coming back. She described her son the way a person describes someone they studied closely over decades.
All right, State,
Yes, Judge.
are you ready to proceed?
The state's ready, Your Honor.
All right. Is there any opening,
We will waive opening at this time.
defense, any opening statements?
Briefly, Judge. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm been through all this stuff. came back yesterday, which was work to deal with my client. I know you guys deliberated on this and considered all of that. You have been super attentive this whole time, and I appreciate that. With respect to verdict, we're not here to discuss that. We're here today because we have to figure out what we're going to do. My client's perspective, we're hoping that the evidence that you see today will have you at least consider probation this time. I've been doing this for a long time, almost 30 years. Probation's not it. Okay? It's a gift to people too. All right. The conviction for a felony in this matter has serious ramifications for the rest of my client's life, no matter what. What we're asking today, we're asking for your assistance in trying to help prevent another life. That's what we're asking. It's something that I want you to take seriously. I want you to consider this whole range of punishment. I'm just going to ask you to consider justice and mercy. There's two sides of the same coin. But you don't have to have draconian punishment in order to get justice. Okay? So that's what we're doing today. Trying to figure out what happens. Okay?
She talked about how Eric, at 5 years old, stood between a group of children who were taunting his disabled cousin Christopher and told them they had no idea what Christopher had been through. She talked about how Eric came home from middle school one afternoon with a red mark on his face where a classmate had slapped him.
Are you the same Christine Gonzalez that testified in the guilt-innocence portion of this trial?
Yes,
And are you the mother of Eric Michael Moody?
yes.
So what I want to talk to you about today is your son, Eric Michael Moody. Can you please explain to the jury what it was like raising Eric?
Sure. So Eric was the greatest gift that God gave to me. He had many wonderful qualities that were apparent very early in his life.
And when she asked what he did, he said he walked away. She said that answer gave her more pride than almost anything else in her life. She talked about his degrees, his history degree from Trinity, his computer engineering degree from UTSA.
And I remember a story. I remember a time when we were all on a playground. His aunt and I were there, the cousins. There were other children there as well. And I started to see some children picking up on Christopher. And I'll never forget, Eric walked up to those kids, and keep in mind, he's about 5 years old. And he says, you have no idea what my cousin has been through. He's had so many surgeries. You need to leave him alone. And of course, it was a proud moment for me then, but also I was like, wow, here he is, such a young age, and yet he is able to understand what his cousin is going through. Christopher taught Eric, can you hear me okay? Christopher taught Eric compassion, faithfulness, loyalty, how to stand up for what's right.
His 2 years teaching English in China, his work developing software that monitored student safety. She talked about the celebration of life that his regular coffee bar held for him after he died, how strangers came up and told her things about her son she had never known.
And I remember one day, he was in middle school, he came home, and he opened the door, and I just saw this expression on his face that concerned me, and his face was red on one side, and I looked at him, and I said, Eric, what's wrong? And he said, Mom, I was on the bus, and I was sitting around with this kid, we were heading back and forth, and we got on the bus, and we were continuing to play, and then all of a sudden, he just turned around and slapped me. And I said, well, what did you do then? And he goes, nothing. I just walked away.
Because Eric was too humble to tell her himself. Then she told the jury what she wanted them to do.
I had such admiration and respect for my son at that time because he proved to me that he was extremely level-headed, and he showed me that he could walk away from a situation even when he was provoked. And he proved that over and over again in his life.
She said she had expected Castillo to take responsibility before it ever came to trial. She said the range of punishment was 2 to 20 years, and she trusted the jury to weigh it. She said, as his mother, she believed he deserved the maximum. She said she understood that with good behavior a person serving 20 years might be released in 10. She said that was acceptable to her.
They did. They hosted a celebration of life for him, which was very, very moving because as a child I knew everything about him, his friends, and what he was up to. But here he was, 36 years old, and I didn't know all of his friends and every detail that I knew when he was a child. And so at first, I honestly didn't want to go to the celebration of life. I was very shocked and denial and angry about what had happened to Eric. But my family encouraged me to go. And I'm so grateful that I went now because I got to meet so many people that Eric loved, and they told me stories about him that I wouldn't have known because Eric wouldn't have shared those things with me. Eric was a very humble, modest person, and some people shared stories of how he had helped them out when he needed help. And so I was deeply moved by that. And and I was very grateful to Halcyon for hosting this event.
She said the bigger picture mattered because there were many people driving recklessly, many people with firearms who lacked the self-control to carry them, and the penalties needed to be stiffer because innocent people kept dying. On cross-examination, McClan asked Gonzalez whether she could find it in her heart to have mercy on Robert Castillo.
You know, I told our attorneys that I was really surprised that we were coming to trial. I honestly thought that this would be settled out of court, that Mr. Castillo would take a plea deal, that he would take responsibility for what he did and show remorse and be willing and want to take the punishment that he deserves. There are many decisions, poor decisions that Mr. Castillo made that led to my son's death. So I want Mr. Castillo to be held accountable for what he did. I understand that the sentence has been anywhere from 2 to 20 years. That's quite a broad range, and I trust that you will make the right decision as far as how much time Mr. Castillo should serve in prison. As his mother, I think he deserves the maximum, just 20 years. I understand if he shows good behavior in the system and is remorseful and works on himself, that he could get out in 10 years.
She said she could forgive him. She said she had not seen him take responsibility. She said the trial's defense arguments, the ones blaming the Tesla, blaming the other driver, had demonstrated that clearly. McClan told her those arguments were his, made by him as counsel, not by Castillo personally.
So, that is what I'm asking of the court. And there's a bigger picture as well, okay? For instance, I'll never forget when I went to the crash site where I put flowers there, and I prayed, and I walked away, and as I was walking away, someone tapped me on the back, and I looked at that person, and it was a man I've never seen before, and he said, "Are you Eric's mother?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I didn't know, Eric, but I am so sorry for your loss." And he said, "I run down the street every day, and the thought that any one of us could have been run over is just too much." So, there's a bigger picture. This trial is about Mr. Castillo, the poor decisions he made that caused my son's life. That unfortunately, there are many Mr. Castillos in the world driving recklessly. There are many Mr. Castillos in the world that have guns that shouldn't have guns, because you have to have control of yourself if you have a firearm. And I don't think that Mr. Castillo showed control that night. So I think that the penalty should be stiffer, because it's an epidemic of people who are getting killed, innocent people, your daughter, your son, your grandmother, the list goes on. It needs to stop.
She said she understood. She separated the two. She said she still believed Castillo needed time in prison to reflect, to feel remorse, and to ensure he would not hurt himself or anyone else the same way again.
Oh, I forgive him. I sincerely feel that until this point, I haven't seen him take responsibility for what happened. The closing arguments clearly demonstrated that, as far as it was the Tesla's fault, it was the other driver's fault, it was this and that. So I think that Mr. Castillo will have some time in prison thinking about what got him there. Okay? And he needs to do some reflecting, and he needs to feel remorse, and he needs to work on changing his life so that he doesn't hurt himself or anyone else in this tragic way again.
When McClan asked if justice and mercy could exist in the same verdict, she said, "Absolutely." Milan called a probation officer named Dara Salazar to explain exactly what probation would mean in practice. Salazar worked as a court liaison officer for the Bexar County Adult Probation Department. She had been doing it for almost 7 years in felony courts. She walked the jury through every standard condition. No new offenses, no alcohol, even though it is legal, mandatory employment, regular reporting, field visits, GPS monitoring options, the SCR-AM ankle device that measures alcohol consumption continuously through the skin.
Oh, yeah. I have it separate.
Okay. Would you agree with me that we can have justice in this case and still have mercy?
Oh, absolutely.
Because at some point, Mr. Castillo is going to get out of prison if he goes to prison, right?
Yes, yes.
And that will still never bring your son back.
That's not the issue here, sir. The issue is taking full responsibility for what you've done.
The TAPI evaluation, which stands for Treatment Alternative to Incarceration Program, a substance abuse screening that determines whether a person needs inpatient or outpatient treatment. Moral recognition therapy, an 8-week cognitive behavioral class designed to address thinking errors and decision making. The Victim Impact Panel, an 8-hour class where survivors of alcohol-related crashes speak directly to offenders. She told the jury the goal of probation was rehabilitation and reducing recidivism. She told them the judge could impose any condition she found necessary. She told them if Castillo violated any condition, a motion to revoke would be filed, a warrant would be issued, and he would face the full underlying sentence the jury set that day. The prosecutor argued against probation in her closing. She told the jury that granting probation meant telling the community the actions Castillo committed that night were not enough. She said,
I mean, why do we do probation instead of just saying, you know what, everybody goes to prison? Why do we do probation?
To rehabilitate the probationer and help them with their needs. We want every probationer to be successful, and we're here to help guide them and encourage them. But our ultimate goal is to reduce.
Your verdict decides when he gets to get behind a motor vehicle again, when he gets to consume alcohol again, and when he gets to possess firearms again. She told them 10 years was not what Eric Moody's life was worth. She said Castillo had not been crying when they watched the video of Eric Moody being struck and killed. He was crying now, she said, because now he had to accept the consequences. She asked for 20 years on both counts. McClan told the jury this was not the worst case they could imagine. He asked them whether it made sense to send a man to prison for 20 years for running a red light and making a series of catastrophic decisions. He invoked Castillo's 3 children, his disabled brother Paul, who depended on him for physical care, his role in his church and community. He told the jury that probation with a 10-year underlying sentence meant the threat was real, the accountability was real, and the chance at rehabilitation was real.
He wasn't crying when we saw video of Mr. Moody being struck and killed. But now that he has to accept what he did, now he's crying. I want you to recall his testimony when you all go back there to deliberate. Because make no mistake about it, I am asking you to deny his application, and I am asking you to render a verdict of 20 years in count 1 and count 2. Now I want to talk to you about the charge, starting out with a deadly weapon, okay? Our law provides that a deadly weapon means anything that in the manner of its use or intended use is capable of causing death or serious bodily injury. So what I want you to pay attention to is that or. Okay, we heard some arguments from Mr. McClain that it wasn't the defendant's intent. Okay, and I would agree with that because he was charged with a reckless killing, intentional killings or murders. But I want you to pay attention to that or, in the manner of its use. In the manner that the defendant operated his motor vehicle on that night, we know that legally it is a deadly weapon, because it was capable of causing death to Mr. Moody, and it did. Okay? Then moving on. We've already gone through the range of punishment for count 1 and count 2 is anywhere between 2 to 20 years in prison. But I want to talk to you all about the application for probation. Okay? Because it says the jury assesses the punishment at not more than 10 years for that offense. So should you decide to grant the defendant's application for probation, what you are saying is that this wasn't enough. The actions that he committed on this night were not enough. Because you're going to give him a second chance, and even if he messes up and gets that second chance, he maybe would have to serve 10 years. That is not what Mr. Moody's life was worth. That's not in the best interest of this community. Okay? Because your verdict decides when he gets to get behind a motor vehicle again, when he gets to consume alcohol again, and when he gets to possess firearms again.
The jury deliberated. They came back with a verdict. On count 1, manslaughter, they assessed 12 years. On count 2, failure to render aid after a death, 12 years. Both counts to run concurrently. They found that a motor vehicle was used as a deadly weapon in both counts. Because the deadly weapon finding was true, Castillo would be required to serve at least half of his sentence before becoming eligible for parole. Probation was denied. The judge imposed the jury's verdict, made the affirmative deadly weapon findings, and ordered no contact with the Moody family. There was no victim impact statement delivered that day.
All right. With regards to count 1 on the finding as to use or non-use of a deadly weapon, the jury unanimously find that the defendant used or exhibited a deadly weapon, namely a motor vehicle, during the commission of the offense of manslaughter as charged in count 1. With regards to punishment in count 1, it states we assess his punishment at confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for a term of 12 years, and there is no fine. With regards to count 2, As to findings as to use or non-use of deadly weapon, it states, we unanimously find that the defendant used or exhibited a deadly weapon, namely a motor vehicle, during the commission of the offense of failing to comply with the duty to give information and render aid after being involved in an accident involving personal injury or death under sections 550.021A4, 550.021C1A, and 550.023 of the Texas Transportation Code as charged in Count 2. With regards to Count 2 for punishment, the jury states we assessed his punishment at confinement in the Institutional Division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for a term of 12 years, and there is no fine. Does anyone wish to have the jury polled? State?
No, Your Honor.
Defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the deputy will now take you back to the jury room, and I'll come back and talk with you briefly. Everyone please rise. All right, everyone please be seated. All right, Mr. Castillo, the jury having found you guilty of Count 1 and Count 2, as legally required, the court then is finding you guilty of Counts 1 and Count 2. And as legally required, the court is running Counts 1 and Counts 2 concurrently. The court will give you credit for any time served, which is legally required. And the court will sentence you to 12 years in the prison and Counts 1 and Counts 2.
After the verdict was read, the family declined. Carla Castillo, Robert's mother, had told the jury during her testimony that she believed prison was for people who committed intentional crimes, for repeat offenders. She said this was a tragedy and she was sorry for the loss of Eric Moody. She said she had almost lost her son, Paul, the same way. The courtroom handles grief from both directions simultaneously, and it does not resolve the contradiction.
I think he'd be a lot more helpful here. I believe presidents who intentionally commit crimes, that's my belief, I don't know, but intentionally commit crimes and that are repeat offenders and things like that. He has never been convicted. He's not a bad person. It was a tragic loss, and I'm so sorry for the loss of Mr. Moody. I really am. I almost lost my son.
What happened in that room was not a failure of the system. It was the system working exactly as designed, forcing 12 ordinary people to sit inside an impossible question and return a specific number, knowing that no number restores what was taken, and that the number they choose will define the remainder of one man's life while doing nothing to extend another's.